So what's the best time to send? And then what's the right way to follow up?
The best time to send is during work hours. It's helpful for me to see things come in during work hours just because I'm already looking at my inbox. After work, there's the chance it will get buried with any newsletters I get or any news alerts I get. Following up, I do think it's important to give journalists time to open up the email. We get a lot of emails. I feel like I've said that a couple times now, but we do. I do not like to get followed up, certainly not within 24 hours. That to me is kind of like a red flag. It's like, okay, unless it's something that is so pressing, like I don't even know what it would be, but generally that is out.
What's up, everyone? I'm so excited for this episode of the Small Business PR Podcast. As you know, we have so many journalists that come to our show, but today we have a very special one because I don't think we've covered this before. So today we have the one and only Jillian Wilson. So she is a staff reporter at Huffington Post, where she reports on wellness, mental health, physical health. But before that, she had so many fun things that she was writing about, including food and travel for Philadelphia Inquirer, for Eater Philly, for Fodor's Travel. So welcome to the show, Jillian.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So tell me a little bit more about what you're currently doing and the topics that you're writing about.
Yeah, sure. So I'm at HuffPost. I've been here for a little over a year, started last July, and I'm the wellness reporter. So I cover everything from physical health to mental health. So it's a really wide scope, which is honestly really fun because I get to cover everything from how to be happier, talking to psychologists about that, to information on heart health, to information on COVID, of course, because this is the world we're living in, to articles about fitness where I talk to personal trainers and physical therapists. So it's really all different topics, anything that you think of when you think of physical or mental health.
Yeah, I love that. And we so need that in the world right now,
Mm-hmm.
That is definitely needed. Before we get into kind of more things I want to ask you, let's make a distinction here for the people who are not as familiar with kind of journalism and writing. Can you distinguish like what you were doing before as a freelance writer, writing for various outlets? And right now you're saying you're full-time as a staff writer. So what does that mean?
Yeah, sure. So full-time staff writer this is my full-time job. I work here 9 to 5, give or take some hours. But I'm here full-time. This is my one job. When you're freelance, though, and I did also freelance for HuffPost before I started here full-time, you often have multiple clients. So that's when I wrote for Huffington Post, Eater Philly, Philadelphia Inquirer, and Fodor's Travel, Cupcakes and Cashmere, a bunch. So you're writing different articles for different news sources on different topics. Like you wouldn't pitch the same article to 2 publications, but different articles, and it's more like kind of plug and play. Like you kind of pick when you want to work for different outlets. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. What about the stories though? Even though you were freelancing, and I think that's kind of where the media landscape is going. There's a lot of freelance writers write for different things, but do you still mainly cover a theme within that freelancing?
Generally, yes. I would say yes. So for me, I covered wellness at HuffPost, and then the other publications, it was more like food, travel, things to do in Philadelphia. So those were my 2 buckets. And I just pitched, whatever subject to the appropriate publication. But yeah, I would say people generally are known as like a food freelancer or a travel freelancer, and they like have their niche because that's also how you make a name for yourself.
Got it. So for example, one of the things I cover in my PR program is how to find and connect with journalists. And you want to make sure that you're always pitching to the right journalist, not the editor-in-chief, of course, right? Someone that covers your beat. So is it accurate to say let's say if I'm just starting out in PR, I'm on Twitter, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram, I happen to come across someone that says, writer, travel writer. So then does that kind of make me feel like I can pitch to them and there's a high chance that they will write for many different outlets because they just say that they're travel writer, but not travel writer at, Condé Nast or something?
Yes. Likely if the person is full-time, they will list where they work, especially because I do use social media to reach out to sources. So I want them to know that I'm like a legitimate writer. I'm not just like a spam account or something. So yeah, I would say generally if they don't list where they're working, it probably means they have multiple publications that they write for, or they have a blog and they freelance for other publications. But you will find that some freelancers will list the publications they write for in their Twitter bio or in their Instagram bio or whatever.
Yeah. Well, you say that now with what's going on with the economy and the market and kind of how journalism is changing, do you feel like there's less and less staff writers and more freelancers, or you don't find that to be the case?
That is a good question. It, Sadly, this industry is so their layoffs are rampant, which is, so sad. And I've had so many friends impacted. I've been impacted at previous jobs, and it's really tough. So I do think the beauty with freelance is you're your own boss in a sense. So yes, you are reporting into an editor who edits your pieces. Um, you have a little more control, and layoffs, I would say, maybe don't impact freelancers as much as although I'm not 100% sure on that. That's what I would think. But yeah, I would say more and more people are turning to freelance just because um, the media landscape is changing so much. And I think also a lot of people, remote work is so popular now. And with some people going back to the office, with freelance, you don't have to go back to the office. You can write from Bali or write from Tulum, and no one's going to tell you you can't do that. So, and also if you're a travel writer or a food writer, you oftentimes have to write from those places. So, yeah, I think, I don't know the split of what percent of journalists are in staff positions versus freelance, but I would say freelance is certainly gaining popularity, and it also allows you to write for other publications and take on other kinds of work too if you want as well. And maybe that other work is more stable or something like that. So I could see how it is becoming more popular in this unfortunate media landscape.
Yeah, I mean, I do see that there's still opportunities and kind of a silver lining for businesses who are pitching, because I always say, look, if this person is a freelance writer, that means that there's better chances of you getting featured in multiple outlets, right? It's not like once you feature someone, you check the box and okay, then I cannot write about them again, right? When you say that, you kind of go back to the same sources for all the different outlets if you are a freelancer.
Yeah, absolutely. When I freelanced, I certainly had certain contacts who I knew I could reach out to for certain information or certain expert sources. And yeah, it's like if you that gives you as the PR person, it gives you access to different media outlets because the writer you're talking to writes for different media outlets.
Yeah, I love that. That's why I always tell my PR students, treat it as a relationship, play the long game. So now that we're talking about kind of this runway of how do you first connect with journalists, which is, by the way, not anything that we learn as business owners or taught in schools. Can you just give a high level rundown of what is the right etiquette if somebody is a bootstrapping small business, or maybe they're a consultant or an author, but they don't have a huge following, right? How can they go and connect with someone like you in hopes that they can get featured and maybe get a quote in one of your articles about wellness?
Yeah, so I personally prefer email, and I prefer that someone emails me, after doing the research to make sure that I cover the topic that they're pitching. Um, kind of a short and sweet email introducing yourself, introducing what you're pitching, and also asking any questions you have around what kind of areas I cover or what I don't cover or how I cover. And that's always welcomed. And yeah, I would just say reaching out with like a pretty straightforward subject line, introducing what you're pitching and a couple paragraphs about you and what you're pitching. And I think it's also helpful to say that, I'm not with a big PR agency, but I am, an advocate for this because it's my company or it's my sister's company or whatever it is, and kind of explaining from that sense why you are so passionate about a specific brand or product or service or whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, when you say that that passion and that mission alignment is more important than whether or not they have someone representing them.
Yes, yes. And to be honest, I do not know when I look at my inbox, I don't know if the pitch is coming from a huge PR agency, a small PR agency, or like the founder of the company. Like when I click on the email, like that's not something I know before I click it. So it's not like I'm vetting through and only opening certain emails. So really, the passion is so important when I open that email and see it's not like kind of a cookie cutter email that goes out to 5,000 people. It's like, oh, this person is actually passionate about this, and or they own this brand or they own this service, and that is exciting. And you do want to bolster people up who have that kind of passion and who are working to reach their goals and their dreams.
Yeah, I love what you said about a subject line that is descriptive, not spammy or gimmicky, and a few paragraphs. That's exactly the structure of my CPR pitch that I teach in my PR Starter Pack program. But now that we've gotten into the juicy part of this, which is what I love actionable things. Let's actually talk about the structure of the pitch. So one question I get asked all the time, even before writing the pitch, is, Gloria, should I send from my company email, or should I, send from my personal email? What is your take on that?
I prefer company email. I think personal email sometimes can get a little lost. I think a company email, like you can see the brand, you can see that they're affiliated with it. There's no questions of like, oh, who is this again? Like, who am I emailing? It's like it's right there in the email address. So
I
that's
guess my
personally
question
what
is, should it be like a name at company, or should it be like hello at company? Because some other journalists I talk to say that if it looks like a marketing email, then it probably won't get read. So tell me about like what's the best way to stand out as an
Yes, I
individual.
agree with that. I agree with that. I wouldn't do the hello at company. I would do name at company because I think hello at company might, that's where the newsletters come from. That's where like the customer service emails often come from. So this way, if it's a name, you're aware that, oh, Jane Smith is emailing me from this company. And also, if I needed to double check and make sure it wasn't spam, I could go on LinkedIn and see that, oh, okay, yeah, she does work there.
Yes, I'm so glad you validated and verified that. Okay, so now we got the email down. Let's talk about subject lines. What are some do's and don'ts for the subject line?
Um, so honestly, a tactic I've seen recently is people will kind of recreate a HuffPost headline that I would write in a subject line advertising their product, which I think is great. So something like if not their product or like their expertise. So I've got to think of an example. But for example, if someone is representing their bar studio, it would say something like 10 ways bar can impact your heart health, which is like kind of a HuffPost headline, or so just something like that. So I think really kind of looking at the way the author writes their headlines and putting that into a subject line is a way to grab my attention personally. And it also shows me off the bat that, oh, this could actually be a HuffPost article. Like this is relevant.
Yeah, everything you said, Jillian, is music to my ears because I literally say the same thing, which is you want your
Mm,
subject lines to read like an article. You don't want your subject line to be like name, company, like, please read this because you don't know them. It's not relevant. And so I know this is an unnatural act for so many small businesses, especially in my community who are wearing all the hats, right? But even if you just master that one thing, that'll increase your open rates. So I always say start with the subject line. What is the message? What is the story that you are trying to add value to? And I always say you're not selling to the journalist. So the subject line cannot be anything that you're selling. It has to be about what the issue or topic is. So I'm so glad you said something like, 10 ways Pilates for heart health. We actually have a couple Pilates teachers and
mm.
trainers and coaches in our program. So I love that. Now let's get into the actual body of the email. Now, obviously, I teach my CPR method, credibility, point of view, and relevance being the most important thing. But I want to hear from you. What is like a very easy and perfect email that gets you to actually respond?
Short and sweet, certainly for me at least. I get a lot of emails every day, and it's so great if I can open an email and see in that first, even first paragraph or first couple sentences exactly what this person is pitching, the value it will bring to HuffPost readers, and why it's relevant to me as a wellness reporter. So just really trying to get that down into a few, I don't know how many sentences, but not super long. I don't know. I guess I would say like two or three short paragraphs, like short. Like I like it really short. But also, I will say, if someone did have more to say, you could always almost like in those first two or three paragraphs kind of pull out like a quick summary, like this is what you need to know. And then below, you could go into the full press release, which is fine. But I think it's helpful to kind of have that like abstract almost in the intro so someone doesn't have to read the entire press release because I know as a writer, it like hurts my heart to say I'm not going to read all the words. And I also realize not everyone reads my words, but it is helpful just to see that abstract so you can know off the bat what they're pitching and how it's relevant.
Yes, I always say that you always have to start with the relevance piece in my CPR method because you're competing for the journalist's attention every second, every line, right? So you want to get them immediately. Why is this mattering right now? Another litmus test that I teach my students is if your pitch or subject line sounds like it works 5 years into the future or 5 years in the past, it's probably not relevant enough. So I'm always trying to say like, what's the relevance? So what are some examples of ways that founders who might have so much to say, how can they start to take things away and only leave like the relevant things? Can you talk about what are some things that they must include? And then we can go into the things that usually are fluffy and not necessary.
Yeah, so include your expertise for sure. Like, what makes your service, your product, your brand different? Who are you in relation to the product? Are you the owner? Are you the communications manager? Are you the best friend who was also doing the PR? Like who are you? Um, and also it's helpful to have a hook like something newsy. So if it's, National Relaxation Day and you own a massage studio, it's like, oh, National Relaxation Day is coming up. I own this massage studio. Here's my pitch and why, and here's how it's relevant. That's always helpful. So all of those like national days, like we certainly don't write about every single one. I feel like there's one every single day, but sometimes we do write about certain days or months like that. And also, if there's like a study that's recently come out about the benefits of Pilates or something, or the benefits of a HIIT workout, it could be helpful to use that as a pitch as well.
Ooh, you're just dropping all the gems. I want to break that apart a little bit. So you said use a study. That's also some of the things that I teach because I
Mm.
think so many times founders trip themselves up and say something like, well, there's already a lot of discussion about yoga. There's nothing else that I can contribute. And it's like, that's not true because there's still articles being published about what is yoga, right? Don't you agree that there's people at every level, whether it's beginner or advanced. So would you agree that like, even though I'm in a quote unquote saturated industry, that there's still going to be room for me to pitch?
Oh yeah, of course. And there are also different avenues in, which is like the job of the journalist. And we've done stories about the best yoga moves to do first thing in the morning. Like that is a different way to like talk about this subject. Or, we've done things around like primal movement. I don't know if you're familiar with yeah, so like primal movement, like why that is trending right now, because it was trending earlier this year. So just there are different avenues in, and it's like just thinking of those little things like this is what's good in the morning, this is what's good before bed, this is what's good on the weekend, this is what you should be teaching your children. Like, just there's so many different avenues in that kind of, yeah, they talk about the same topic as yoga in yoga as the whole, but there's a different avenue in.
I hope for those that are listening, I'm actually nodding at every sentence that she's saying. So I always talk about pitching like layers of an onion. And I think you
Mm.
illustrated perfectly where if yoga is the top layer of the onion, what we want to do is do the work to peel away the layer and add levels of specificity. So like you said, yoga in the morning, yoga for kids, yoga for a prenatal, yoga for hip replacement. So I love what you said about that because the more specific the pitch is, the more you can use it, right? If it's very fluffy in general, you're kind of like, well, I don't know what you're trying to say, right?
Yes, yes, absolutely. So yeah, it's just like peel away at that onion, and even if something comes to you, like I mean, especially like I'm a wellness reporter, but I am not a yoga teacher. So it's like yoga teachers have information that I do not have. So it's like if you're a yoga teacher and you are really excited about a certain movement that has really helped your back, then pitch like 5 yoga moves that can help with back pain.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? That has been in the news since like 1980s and it's still being published. So I don't really
Hmm.
find that there's like an expiration date to that kind of expertise, right?
Right. Especially because I feel like we learn more and more every year. So it's like it can always be updated with new information or even just brought to the surface for people who missed the article 5 years ago. Like that is, that happens. Or they read it 5 years ago, they completely forget because they read 10 articles a week. And then 5 years later, they're reminded of, oh, the power of yoga for my back pain.
Right. And you know, with today's ever busy news cycle, you're churning out content all the time. So I think for a lot of founders, they think, well, this is so obvious, right? But it's not obvious to me. I'm not a yoga teacher, not obvious to you. So I hope for
Right.
anyone that's listening that ever has imposter syndrome, because we all do, right? We're humans. If you think it's been said before or it's been done before, or there's other yoga teachers who work with celebrities who I might have pitched, like this episode is for you. And I'm so glad that you've really touched on that, which brings me to my next question, the question of credibility, right? When I think about wellness and health, I think a lot of founders are thinking, well, I don't have letters after my name and I don't have all these diplomas and certificates. What is your answer about that? What is your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I understand that, of course. There are certain topics where I do look for letters after the name, like when it comes to heart health, like I'm talking about heart attack or stroke, of course, I'm going to be talking to a doctor. But for someone who owns a yoga studio, owns a cycling gym, owns a massage um, therapy studio, you're experts. This is your day to day work. This is what you do. You are in this work more than anyone else. And it doesn't matter about the letters after your name. If, this is what you do every day. And your expertise is what our readers want. And our readers certainly do not care about letters after a name. They want to know that, oh, so and so owns this studio in Ohio or in Florida. They have great advice. And that's really what they're looking for.
Yeah. I'm sorry if it's loud outside. I live in Brooklyn and there's always something going on in the neighborhood. Uh,
My dog
but
was also barking, so I'm sorry if you heard that.
I didn't. But yeah, so back to what you're saying, that there's always something new and fresh. Let's talk about what that means, because earlier you said something's trending, like a pose or something's on TikTok. Is that a good way to pitch? Because I always tell my students, like, look for like searchable words, like set up a Google keyword alert and look what's happening on TikTok. Would you say that that's a
Mhm.
kind of a good way in?
Oh, yes. Yes. If something's trending on social media, it is trending in the world, beyond our screens. So there is a lot of power. Social media is just a powerful tool. And if something's trending there, jump on it. Like we also get story ideas from things that are trending on TikTok. So it's likely if you see something about a trending um, skincare remedy, it's likely that I'm also looking at it. So if someone were to pitch me, it'd probably be perfect timing where it's like, oh, I need an expert for that anyway. Talk to me about this. Is this legitimate? Is it fake? Should people be warned? What do they need to know? So I think absolutely journalists look at TikTok all the time. We look at Instagram. We look at not so much Facebook, but we look at Instagram and we look at TikTok for these trending items to see what people are talking about. And also, it's important as a wellness reporter to debunk anything that could potentially be dangerous or not ideal for certain people because things on TikTok are certainly not always safe. Isn't I feel like that's where people learn to eat Tide Pods. Maybe that was before TikTok. I don't know. But either way, TikTok isn't exactly like the safest place for information. So it's important as journalists that we address those topics. So if you see something trending on there, whether or not it's accurate, pitch it and be like, this is actually beneficial because X, or this is dangerous. Do not do this because X.
Yeah, I love what you're saying, because what the essence of what this is positioning themselves as an expert, right? And experts is
Mm-hmm.
not does not mean you have a certification or a degree. It just means, for me, what an expert is someone with a point of view. So what I'm hearing from you, and correct me if I'm wrong, is you're just looking for someone with a point of view on a bigger topic. Like like you said, agree or
Yes.
disagree,
Yes.
yes or no,
Yes.
things
So
to know.
as long as they are in the field and like well versed, like if they own a certain type of gym or own a certain type of studio, absolutely, you are an expert, no doubt. And those are the people who I call on for a lot of my articles anyway. Absolutely.
Yeah. Is there another way to leverage credibility if you don't have a lot of letters after your name, or if you're really early starting out in your business? How can we get into your inbox and get your attention?
Yeah. So I think once again, just being clear about what your business is, what your product is, and also letting me know like what kind of education you do have in the subject area. Because also, if you are starting a business in a certain area, you do have knowledge there. Like even if it's new, like for example, I'm not going to go open a massage studio because I would probably cause back injury to people or something. But someone who is in that field, like if you open a massage studio, you have the expertise. So just as long as you pitch yourself accurately, like you could say, "Oh, I worked at so and so studio for 10 years and now I'm opening my own." That is 10 years of experience that you have under your belt. It's not about only if you, it's not, I don't only count the years that you own a specific business. It's you have 10 years of training elsewhere, or you went to school for this, or you did these kind of night classes and then started working as a, um, you know, skin tech or something. So it's like, it's not just how long have you owned a business. It's like, okay, tell me what you did before and why that's relevant.
Yeah, 100%. And we have members in our program who are cancer survivors or currently undergoing cancer treatment, and they actually formulated clean cleaning products without toxins. And they're not a, chemist or anything, but would that be something to add in the pitch, like their own personal story and their own why?
Yes, absolutely. So it's like it shows once again that you have that passion and that you have, and you know, clearly very passionate about the safety of products and the clean products because of the cancer treatment, the cancer diagnosis. So that's important to include as well. And also just helps humanize a product.
Yeah, but keep it short, y'all. Jillian said three paragraphs, so keep chipping away at the pitch. What about attaching resumes, bios, longer things that they want to stuff in the pitch? What is the best way for you to find out more information without the pitch being really long?
I would say linking to a website is a nice way to kind of have everything in one place. So it can be a portfolio, it can be the website for your Pilates studio. And on there, you can have an about me page that tells more about you. You can have information about whatever, whatever is relevant. And I think that's a powerful way because I think to open up an email and see a ton of attachments, I kind of get a little bit shell shocked. And if I can just click on a website and kind of go through it on my own pace without having to have a specific email open, it's helpful. And also, once again, brings that credibility where I'm aware that, oh, okay, this person owns a Pilates studio. Here's the website for the Pilates studio. Here's more information on them. Here's where they're located. Here are the kind of classes they have. So it just kind of helps see it all in one place like that.
And does it matter if it's local in your city? What if they own a studio somewhere not in your state? Does that matter or not really?
HuffPost is national. So for me personally, it does not matter. And I do look for people all over the country because our readers are all over the country. So I've talked to people who own studios in Washington, D.C., in Philadelphia, where I am, in San Diego, in Denver. So it doesn't matter to me if it's a small local studio, as long as they have that expertise and they're doing things in a safe and legal way, it doesn't matter to me.
Yeah. Oh, I love how you validated that because wellness is universal, right? Health is the
Mm-hmm.
human right. So I totally agree with what you said. So now, so we talked about so many things. I hope people are taking notes. We talked about the etiquette to follow up, to message a journalist. We talked about the subject line. We talked about the structure of the pitch, how to put in a resume and other things. What about sending times? What's the best way to send and how do you follow up? Which is probably the question I get asked the most. Gloria, this journalist opened my email multiple times. Now they're ghosting me. I don't know what to do. So what's the best way to like the best time to send and then what's the right way to follow up?
The best what time to send for me at least, and I'm sure it varies, but is during work hours. It's helpful for me to see things come in during work hours just because I'm already looking at my inbox. after work, there's the chance it will get buried with any newsletters I get or any news alerts I get. And I get a lot of them. So it's helpful just to see it come in during work hours. And following up, I do think it's important to give journalists time to open up the email. We get a lot of emails. I feel like I've said that a couple times now, but we do. Um, I do not like to get followed up, certainly not within 24 hours. That to me is kind of like a red flag. It's like, okay, unless it's something that is so pressing, like I don't even know what it would be, but generally that is out. I would say I like to at least 4 business days between follow-ups. And I prefer those to be email. I do not love to get phone calls unless, once again, it's an emergency. And actually, it wouldn't be a pitch that I would want via phone. It would be like if it was some kind of, I don't know, other kind of an emergency. But yeah, I would say 4 business days at least. I wouldn't go past like, I wouldn't, you don't want to wait too long because you don't want to become irrelevant or something, but at least 4 business days via email. And if you find the person isn't getting back to you, I will also say I am the queen of not replying for a little while. And it's not anything personal. It's just because I have so many story deadlines. It takes me a while to get back to some people. And I will also search my inbox for certain keywords when I'm writing. So for example, I just did a story 2 days ago about physical therapists and their tips for a good workout. So I Googled in my inbox physical therapists, and I found pitches from, honestly, the one woman I emailed, she pitched me in May. It's August. But I followed up and I was like, I'm so sorry for my delay. Do you want to talk to me about this? And she did, and she was happy. So I will also say, like, don't lose hope if you don't hear back within a few weeks. Certain things are filed away for the future. It's like, okay, now I have a Pilates expert I can reach out to for my next Pilates story. Or, oh, okay, I have a yoga expert I can reach out for my next yoga story. But it doesn't necessarily mean you'll be hearing back from me that week. It might be a few months, which I know is probably frustrating, but it's just kind of, I think, how this industry works.
Yeah. I love what you said. And one of the metaphors that I use when I'm explaining this because for a lot of small business owners, when they send out that pitch, it's so scary already to send it out. And then they're like, oh no, this journalist hates me. I'm never sending anything again. This is not a success. But you just disputed that, along with so many other journalists I've emailed who said the exact same thing, which is sometimes I go back all the time. I go back into my inbox and I will search for people from 6 months ago. But the business owner needs to feel confident to send that pitch early and often so that they can actually put their name in the hat. It's kind of almost like a baggage claim when you get to the airport, right? As the bags are coming in, it's not like they're going to get picked up right away, but it keeps going around and around. Eventually, hopefully, if they're following the tips that you have given, that it will get picked up. I love what you said about that. What about DMs? Because I am a big believer in using multiple platforms to follow up with journalists, obviously respectfully and with tact. How do you feel about using DMs as a way to connect with journalists and social media?
I have received DMs mostly through LinkedIn. That's where I think I get the best DMs and where I'm most likely to respond. So I would say LinkedIn DMs are certainly valuable. My Instagram is private, so that I think probably is a bit of a hurdle. So when I do get DMs, I also often don't see them for a little while. So I would say LinkedIn is probably best for social media DMs, at least for me, someone with a private Instagram. But I will also say I have received DMs on Twitter, and I have replied via Twitter. And kind of like what you were saying. I wonder if the person even got advice from your podcast. Maybe she did, but she emailed me first, followed up, and then DM'd me on Twitter. And the Twitter DM was what caught my attention finally. And I did look at her email, and we were able to, I think she wanted to set up a virtual coffee or something like that. So we did that. But yeah, I would say tread a little lightly with social media at times, especially if they do have an Instagram or Twitter that is purely work. Oh, I feel like that's go for it. If it's personal, it's maybe a little bit more where they want to kind of savor that space for their personal life. They don't want to think about work. So I would just say like tread a little lightly there and lean into LinkedIn and lean into the accounts that are clearly work accounts, which people do have. But if it does feel like it's a more personal account, maybe like go to LinkedIn over Instagram.
Yeah, I love that. Do your research. And maybe that person is from my PR program. So after we get off of this call, you'll let me know who that is because that's
Yeah.
exactly what I teach. Follow up, which is email and then DM, but wait 1 week and do it again. And obviously, in that meantime, follow the journalist and do the right thing so that you are planting the seeds for that relationship. Let's talk about once they follow up, right? They follow up, they don't hear back. What do they do next? If you are opening their email, what is the right way to start that conversation again? What is the right way to keep that door open so it's not just, oh, well, she ghosted me, she hates me. How can someone use that opportunity and turn it into something else?
Yeah. So first of all, no one is ghosting you because they hate you. But I think kind of following up, and I think you could even ask. I've seen some emails where people ask me like, "Is there a better way for me to um, portray this information, or is there a better time for me to email you?" And sometimes I have said like, "Oh yeah, actually, this will be relevant for a story I'm doing in October. Can you follow up with me in September?" And I think that's helpful. Kind of just to ask them point blank, like, "What is best for you? How will this help?" And you could even ask, is this relevant? And if they say no, then you know, and you don't have to keep wondering. And you could even ask, why isn't it relevant? Or what types of things are relevant, just to make sure you are pitching that person the things that they are going to open and
Yeah.
reply to.
That's actually now I got so many ideas for teaching follow up messages is like is this relevant? If not, let me know. Right? I feel like that would be a nice follow up message because it's kind of
Yeah.
eliciting a response.
Yeah, exactly. And, and that's also clear that in the end, you are also we're just trying to be a team here. Like you're trying to pitch what is most relevant for my readers, while also pitching your brand. So it's just a good way to kind of establish that teamwork.
Yeah. So now you've walked us through the whole journey from beginning, whereas when they first make contact with a journalist to once they follow up. Now, let's say you like their pitch. What usually happens next? People are wondering, is it a phone call? Is it just back and forth emails? What does it look like before it actually gets published onto the internet?
Yeah, so generally I email back and I ask to set up an interview, a phone interview. I prefer phone. Some people prefer video. I generally do phone. Um, And once we have a time set, I call the person, and I do phone interview. I record it, and that's really mostly what I need from the PR. And then I write, and if I have any questions as I'm writing, I will email, or if it's pressing, I will text the expert just to get whatever information I need, and then it publishes. Oh, I can't hear you, Gloria.
Oh, sorry. I pressed the wrong button. So do you ever publish things without them knowing the date of it? It's kind of like it's assumed once you get on the call with them, you just kind of say, well, it'll be published, or is there any final rounds of edits, or how does that work after the interview?
I do like to give the date it's publishing if I know it. Generally, I know the date it's publishing. If I don't, I will say like, oh, the week of September 5th or whatever. And I do try to email the final link to every expert I talk to. I would say I succeed in that like 95% of the time. I might miss it if I'm like out sick or something, but generally I do send the final product after it's published. And I don't do edits ahead of time from the expert. The only reason I would ask for any follow up would be if I had a question about something they said or if I was confused. But I don't do edits. Um, and my colleagues really don't either. I think most people don't really do edits just because it ends up becoming a really long process and kind of a little muddy.
Yeah, I always think once the journaler responds, everything's kind of easy from then on out because
Mm-hmm.
you're asking for exactly the questions that you want and they know the answer. So the whole point of kind of what I'm teaching and kind of what the reason why we're recording this episode is just to help founders get to that first point, which is to actually get a response. So now let's talk about, I know that this is different because you're not doing gift guides, but do you have a rough calendar of themes that you're covering? What are some of the stories that you're looking to cover thematically that you kind of cover every year around that same time?
We are heading into, the kind of like respiratory virus season. Kids are back in school. It's going to get colder soon. People are going to be inside more. So certainly topics related to cold and flu and COVID prevention, treatment. And I don't do gift guides, but we do like really actionable things like, I did a fun story last year about how doctors treat their colds at home, like what they actually do, which I thought was really interesting. We've done stories about like the timing for vaccines, like when you should get your flu shot to be best protected. So certainly articles like that, and general fall, like kind of like I did a story last year about how to exercise as the days are getting shorter. It's like, how do you go for a run in the morning? Now it's going to be dark in the mornings. It's kind of like giving people advice on like how to change their summer workout to a fall workout, like just offering tips around that. And before we know it, we will also be in holiday. So I can't believe that. But I would say just kind of things that are seasonal like that. We've certainly done a lot with back to school, that kids will be back to school, I guess, in a few days now. Everyone will be back, but most people are back now. And then, just general, like, of course, seasonal affective disorder. So things around like happiness and joy and kind of like finding the joy in everyday life, as some people really do struggle when it gets dark and cold. So, just general fall, I guess, is what comes down to.
So many ideas. I know all the people listening are going to get off of this and start to just write their pitch and feel excited about the value that they want to contribute in the world. So how can people find you? How can people read more about you and connect with you?
Yeah. So my Twitter's now X, I guess. I guess you could still, I don't know. I think you can go to twitter.com/Jillian, Jillian, Gloria, Gloria. And there you can DM me, as I said. That also has a link to HuffPost and all of like my author page. So it has my bio, and it has also all the recent articles I've written, and my email address. So you can go there, and if you go to HuffPost.com, if you go to the Life page, that is where most of my articles publish. So you'll see my name there, and you can kind of click through to see the kind of articles I'm putting out, and also get in contact with me that way.
I love that. For anyone that's listening that owns a Pilates studio, yoga, who's a doctor or a coach or a nurse or anyone in the wellness services industry, this episode is for you. Please feel free to share it with your friends who can benefit. Thank you so much for your time. You've given us so much to think about, so many actionable tips. I just know our audience is going to get so much value from it. So thank you so much for being on the show, Jillian.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. It was really fun.